What's happening, guys? Saul here. Before we get into the show, just want to tell you about a special offer. If you're a coach and you're interested in ball mastery, 1v1 and small-sided games, the staples of the best academies in the world and what we talk about a lot on this podcast, you can now get a 20% discount on the My Personal Football Coach Level 1 and Level 2 Ball Mastery and 1v1. All right, so Level 1 is like a basic introduction into this methodology, and number 2 is much more in-depth look at 1v1, ball mastery, how to structure sessions and all those soft skills as well. Just use this code, MPFC Coach, and get 20% off now. We also include that 20% off on the virtual conference as well. Just follow the link in the description. But without further ado, let's get into the show. So welcome back to another Coaching Family special, My Personal Football Coach podcast, joined by my good friend and colleague, Glenn Hicks. Glenn, how you doing?
Good, mate.
And you've got a very special guest this week. It's all the way up from Glasgow. It's John Lawson. John is head of foundation phase at Glasgow Rangers. John, how you doing, mate?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, mate. John, could you just give us a little brief outline of your playing and coaching journey up to this point, please?
Yeah, so probably like a lot of people, I wasn't a great footballer. Started playing kind of boys club, junior, went to America for a short spell, and then realised I wasn't very good and wasn't going to make the cut. So I decided to focus on coaching from a young age. Probably around about 17, 18, I started getting a real keen interest in coaching, and from there, grassroots level, I progressed to kind of Hamilton Academical, which was my local senior club at the time, and from there I worked my way through to some other senior clubs, and for the last 9 years I've now been at Rangers, first of all as a part-time coach, and then latterly as a kind of lead kind of 11s and 12s foundation phase coach. So worked across mostly the foundation phase, with a short spell at the kind of YDP, but mostly in the foundation phase age groups, yeah.
So then your foundation phase is what, 8s to 12s, is it?
Yeah, so I primarily look after the under 11s and under 12s, the lead phase across the two age groups, yeah.
Okay, cool. So then give us an idea then, what's a typical week look like for your 11s and 12s?
Yeah, so the 11s and 12s, they train 3 evenings a week. One night they train together, so like a Monday night would be like what we call a toolbox session. So that's a kind of technical night where it's kind of stations, and the under 11s and 12s would combine together, and then at the end we mix the teams to give that kind of player challenge. And then the other 2 nights, each part of the week is just their isolated squads. And within that, then they have their games programme on a Saturday and a Sunday. So the 11s on a Saturday, 12s on a Sunday.
Yeah, so then what's like a typical session look like for those boys?
Yeah, so we're very much technical based. We put a big premium on kind of being able to handle the ball. So, if each week has a theme. So we kind of run in 10-week cycles, but every 5 weeks, every second week would be a kind of in possession, out possession, transition attack, transition defend, and then we always have an outplaying week on week 5, which is pretty much just focused on 1v1s, 2v2s, going alone, going in combination. So within that session, we would look at then breaking it down. So we always start with ball mastery. So the first 30 minutes of a 2-hour session would always be ball mastery. So that would be just the kid and the ball in isolation, going through a range of moves and turns, being able to handle the ball, left foot, right foot, inside, outside, all the different surfaces. We then always finish off with a little kind of challenge. We do like a little clicker challenge. So we try to we have a table where the kids compete to see how many touches they can get in 20-25 minutes. So we have a little kind of table, first, second, third, and each week or each month that we change. At the end of the season, we do a kind of little award. So, they start the kids, they maybe start doing it, they get 1,500, 1,600 touches. We're now getting kids up to 25, 26, 2,700 touches. So again, it's just to promote that little bit of competition. And it's a bit of fun at the start of each session. So we do that, and then what we do is we would then go into we'd split the group into 2. We have a small IPT group, which is kind of individual player training. So we might have highlighted areas of development for some of the kids, and we group them together, maybe in groups of 4 or 5. We take them away for maybe 20, 25 minutes and work on a specific area of their development technically, so unopposed, whilst the rest of the group are maybe focused on the theme. So if it was outplaying, for example, 9, 10, 11 kids are away down out, they're doing an outplaying part of the session. The 2 groups would come together, and then we would kind of go into more the kind of game-related practices where, the goalkeepers are involved, it's going with the full group. And then would eventually lead on to a game which is usually constraint-based, based on the theme of the week. So, for example, if it was outplaying, the constraint would maybe be that you have to play forward or you must outplay to get a goal, something along those kind of lines.
Interesting. So you talk about 1,500 touches, 2,500 touches. How long is that? How long is that, Dave?
So that's between 20 to 25 minutes we look at. And usually there's always a kind of 5-minute kind of juggling practice at the end of it, a little bit of competition as well. So we do the 11s and 12s will compete with each other against that. So it's interesting to start. The under 12s generally start to pull away because they're the older age group. But the kind of inner competition is the under 11s want to try and compete with that. So again, it's usually the under 12 at the end of the season that wins it. But the under 11s you start to see the progress throughout the season, and then usually the next season it's the 11s that go 12s that then start to lead the way, and the 10s become 11s. They're then try to challenge to be better than them. So it's just that internal competition. It's just a bit of fun, but also tries to drive that kind of behaviour of kind of that growth mindset of want to be better, want to get more touches, want to improve. So, and again, it's just a kind of good behavioural thing we start off every single session.
Interesting. And so, like, how does that work then? Practice? You just got someone on a clicker measuring one player each session or something.
Yeah, so we've got one coach. So, for example, if I'm leading the moves and turns, so we've got a kind of library of moves and turns that we'll just carry the kids through, and the kids automatically know them. So if I had to shout Ronaldo chop, they go straight to the Ronaldo chop, left foot, right foot, and they do that within their own time. Within that, they're obviously getting their touches on the ball, and one of the other coaches will stand and he'll pick someone. So we'll always pick someone different every session, and the other coach will just click him for that period of time. And then what we do is we announce it at the end of the session how many they got. We get the kid to guess how many touches they think they got. And by the end of each season, they have about 3 attempts roughly throughout the season to do it by the time we go through all the boys. So usually we're trying to always promote them beating their previous score. And if they can get in the top 3 or the top 1, then it gets kind of celebrated and they get that kind of reward at the end of the season. Now, it might be a signed ball or it might be a signed jersey from the first team, something like that. So just that little kind of carrot that we dangle to give them that reward.
So you had like 2,500 touches per session?
Yeah, and that's before the session. That's before the session starts.
Wow. Glenn, you're coming on that? It's just...
No, it's interesting. I like it sounds like there's a similar theme like Mike Bill was saying the other day and we say, Saul, you're creating that. You say fun, but I think it's more enjoyable, isn't it? Because competition is sometimes not fun. There's tears, isn't there? There's tears, and but the best players in academies are competitive and competing, like going through the rigours of winning, losing, getting the top score this week. The 11's never going to get the top score, but the whole idea of them chipping away to work up the ladder, it's enjoyable for the best players. And all of us as kids, we enjoyed competition, and it sounds like you're creating as early as possible in that session there. The kids are coming in buzzing because they're looking forward to the competition. It's like we've got that competitive element. And like you say, you've created a situation where you dangle a carrot there. So it's a really good starting point for all coaches to think about what they do in the first 20 minutes of the sessions, because it can set it alight and really ignite the rest of the session. So there's a similar theme there that seems quite consistent with a lot of coaches. It's really positive to hear, though.
I think one of the big things as well is we think back to when we played football in the streets, it was just us and a ball. And you never get bored of kicking the ball off the wall or keeping the ball up, or you always that keep you up record that you would try to beat, or you would try to do a move or a turn that you've seen, and everything's in isolation of the ball. We just have that 20-25 minutes with just them and the ball, which is always hard to kind of get, because it's trying to develop that love for the football, even just on your own. But the fact that we can do it with another 16, 17 boys around about, that they really drive that competition, just adds that little kind of extra edge to it, I suppose.
And what strategies do you use as a coach to look, as we all know, you get the best outcomes when you have that speed and intensity on the ball? What strategies do you use personally as a coach to really drive that individual ball work, which can, we've all seen it done well, we've all seen it done maybe not as effectively when the ball's working, if you're doing things at half pace, there's no point basically. Tell us what you do to get the maximum outcomes.
100%. Absolutely. So the 3 big things we will focus on is the skies, change of speed, change of direction. So everything, we're looking for good movers as well. We want premium ball handlers, but we also want kids that can move well. So we are massive on getting the hips moving, getting the knees moving, getting the shoulders moving. So we focus massively on the body fakes and feints, because one of our massive behaviours, but we don't really focus on positions. We're massive on behaviours. So hand tip, hide and escape, twist and turn and escape and pressure. We would rather the kids stay on the ball than just, we've all seen the kid to try and buy himself a bit of time. We would rather the kids stayed on the ball. So we're massive on body fakes, feints, shapes, disguise, using their shoulders, using their hips. So we put a massive emphasis on that, because we want the kids to escape pressure, stay on the ball, twist and turn. So that the real exaggeration of the body fakes is really important. And as you said earlier on there, at speed, if they're going to go through the motions and just kind of half-heart it, then it's not fooling anyone, and we're really bit. And by at the end of that 20-25 minutes, they are blown. By the way, they're shattered, because if we could do that at 50%, the kids would work hard, but not to the maximum level. Literally at the end of that 25 minutes, they're on their knees trying to recover, which is a sign that they've all put it in. And the fact that they see one person doing it there's no hiding place within it. So it's almost like a gauge of how hard they've worked. If we've got a kid at the end of that 20-25 minutes still talking, hands are not on his knees, somebody's not worked hard enough. And that all comes down to the real emphasis they put on the disguise and the speed and the direction. That is the three massive things we're looking at.
And as you talked about your library of skills, core skills, can you just go through those for us? What sort of things just tell us explicitly what they are.
Yeah, so we kind of break it down to two sections. We've got moves to beat an opponent and we've got moves to escape an opponent. You know, a lot of the moves and turns are probably bog standard in terms of what you've seen or what you maybe perform yourself. So, you know, if we're looking at moves to go and beat an opponent, you know, step overs, Ronaldo chops, JJ Akoches, we've all got different names. Some of the skills we're looking to try and name after the kids. So, for example, if we've got a kid that we recognise as performs the turn very well, we may name it after him. So, again, it gives them that reward of that's someone that performs it really well. And then, you know, if another kid sees that, then he wants to try a bit harder to make he might have a move or a turn that he's really good at, that he then gets it named after him. So we're trying to kind of do that. But again, a lot of skills and turns, it's the same, you know, Cruyff turn, tried and tested throughout the years as an escape move. Some might just call it their own one, some might call it after their own players, but we call it the Cruyff. We just keep it really simple. We have a lot of ball manipulation. So as I said, we've got 1v1 moves, face to face, back to back, side on moves on the angle. And then we've got our escape moves. So we've got kind of two channels. Then within that, we've also got ball mastery. So that's like we call it kind of rock and roll feet. So small touches, using different surfaces, you know, little toe taps, you know, round the worlds, different moves and turns and the ways they can manipulate the ball. And that's all incorporated within that kind of first 25 minutes of the session. And there's an element of that as well that's kind of homework practice as well for the kids. You know, as much as we can put the sessions on and tell them what to do, there's also an element of responsibility from the kids to go and practice that. So whether it's out the back door, down the park, with their teammates, with their mum and dad, whoever it may be, we're massive in them taking responsibility for their learning. So as much as we've got that library of skills, a lot it's on them to go and practice as well. There's only so much you can do within 3 nights a week in a game at the weekend, you know.
Yeah, interesting. Glenn?
Yeah, there's a couple of big things there. One thing you said is about, to go back a couple of bits you were saying there, was building the love for the ball. Again, is a consistent theme. We spoke a lot about love and our love as coaches that drives us every day. And, you know, just before we come in here, we was talking about how long we've been coaching, and it's our love that drives us. So I think that's really good to hear. Again, the amount of touches on the ball, kids love doing that and enjoy it. Yeah. But in terms of the content of what you're doing, it's an interesting age you're working at, because I'm there at the moment as well with under 12s at the club I'm working at. And I think at the moment what we've got to do, and I believe it should happen anyway, is I feel like if that the tactical side and what's good for the PDP, what spills down from the first team into the PDP is getting lower and lower and lower. And kids are getting, we said it the other day on the podcast as well, that it's getting tacticalised too early, and I think we need to do opposite. I think as passionate player developers, the movement stuff that you're talking about there, John, doing a terrific job at Glasgow, the same way lots of clubs do. You know, keeping them physically literate throughout their 12 to 16s, where there's a lot of development, a lot of growth. Got to know when to push and when to pull back because of the growth. But we can't come away from it. I think we've got to keep pushing this technical stuff upwards. And it hasn't got to become a battle of technique versus tactics. But we all know that technique is the foundation of all skill. And actually, one individual 1v1 ability is the foundation of the whole game. So the ball goes through, you can play all the best patterns in the world. Ultimately, Harry Kane's going to have a great touch for England and perfect technical execution, or Noni Madueke is going to drop his shoulder superbly well, and he's going to have the physical abilities to dominate his fullback 1v1. So I think we've got to keep doing a job, especially at these ages we're working at, 12s, 13s, 14s. As it tries to seep down, it all becomes about pass, pattern. Like I've said before, though, patterns can be predictable, but individuality and extreme skill cannot be predicted. It can only be responded to or reacted to. Do you know what I mean? Like the great Cruyff. I think we've got to keep doing that job of kind of pushing upwards. Do you know what I mean? And keep that going throughout all the ages. So, again, it's interesting to hear the comparisons to clubs down here in London, John. Yeah,
I think as well with the game now's changed dramatically since the last 10 years, even 5 years, because if you look at all the stats, teams are playing these low blocks, the spaces become smaller, so there's a real premium on kids having individual creativity to go and outplay, and as you said, it's isolation, 1v1. It's that bit of magic to go and beat a low block, to outplay someone, to cut it back, to get a finish, or to create something out of nothing, and everything we do will be in small spaces, and it's it's so important now, the ability to handle the ball in tight spaces, because the spaces are becoming smaller, the game's becoming quicker, it's harder to break teams down now, so there's a real desire for ball handlers and intelligent players to go and outplay and be creative.
Yeah, interesting. And so, I mean, tell us, but does that, how long does that go on for, that 25 minutes with the ball? Does it run through the academy or with the older age groups? Or how does that change, or that aspect?
So it changes slightly. So in terms of the ball handling, ball mastery, that'll always be the start of every single session at every age group. But the kind of 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s and 12s, it's massive, because it's a real big part of our technical curriculum. But naturally, as you go from 13s upwards, then you've got to start to factor in the technical bits and the tactical bits as well, and you start to look at, they've got sports science provision comes in, so they maybe, so we've got a school programme, so a lot of our kids go to that, so there's a bit more time to kind of spend on sports science and analysis and the tactical information. But for the kids that don't go to our school, we're in 3 nights a week still, but again, that's maybe combined sessions, so the time becomes less, so they're trying to squeeze a lot more in. But the ball mastery is a common thread all the way through. It might not be in the same format as the way we deliver it at the kind of younger ones, but there's still that kind of segment at the part of each session that would still be in, so it still carries all the way through until they get to full-time age groups.
And it says how you deal with that, like particularly the foundation phase, the balance between the technical and the tactical, and the individual possession and the group possession.
Yeah. So as I said, we're really big on behaviours. That's what drives our kind of programme. So we don't focus on positions. So in terms of trying to coach someone to be a centre back, we won't do that. We're kind of quite big on it. It's a bit like total football model. We believe that if we can get kids handling the ball, then naturally they're going to show certain attributes towards certain areas of the field. You'll see someone that you can start to get an idea of, he's maybe going to play higher up the pitch, or he's maybe more defensive minded, whatever it may be. But we need to give the kids that exposure to develop these behaviours. So for example, if I've got a kid that maybe isn't great in terms of his outplaying, but he's a defensive based player, I'll go and put him in a wide area, or we'll let him make the sub to go and put himself in that position where he's got a chance to really go and expose himself to 1v1 situations, so he gets a chance to go and develop that part of his game. Now, he might not get to that level where he's 1v1 dominant, and that's where we'll start to decide further up the academy where he should be at. But in terms of tactical, we don't really focus much in tactics. Everything is behaviour based, so it is about technical ability. We do have our themes, and the behaviours start to get teased out. So if we're looking at defensive principles, we'll look at, the week might be defending the final third, and we'll be focusing on them working as a pair and, try to tease out defensive behaviours. Can they stay on their feet? Can they be patient? Can they shoot aside? Can they make contact? Can they tackle or steal? They're the kind of behaviours we'll focus on, rather than the actual function of a back two or a back three or a back four. We just won't focus on tactical work at all. We think the behaviours will tease out that kind of theme, and then that gives us a chance as coaches to maybe coach little individual bits. But the next layer up is when they get to 13s and 14s. That's when they'll start to focus more on units of the pitch and things like that. But we will focus purely on the behaviour, so we won't coach an individual position.
Tell us more about these behaviours, and he gives some of these behaviours you're talking about.
So, for example, if we're looking at, behaviours might be play off left side, play off right side, can handle the ball under pressure, can escape pressure, can check their shoulders and scan. If we're looking at defensive behaviours, can they make contact? Can they recognise when to tackle or steal? Can they make first contact? These are all wee things we look at. So when we come to our kind of parents' meetings or our player reports, it's easy to then break down the report and give feedback on the kid, because these are the bits that we'll focus on. And it means then there's clear kind of areas for them to go and develop, because we think that defending 1v1 at the back is no different from defending 1v1 as a striker, in terms of just how he sets a press and where the angle he presses from, and in terms of can he then make contact. Same as if the ball comes up to a striker and we're asking the centre back to make first contact as well. It's just a different type of contact, but it's still first contact. So these are the little things that we try to kind of keep common all the way through.
Yeah, fantastic. Glenn, you want to come in there?
Yeah, the behaviours, the whole teaching behaviours, concept, principles, values as well. I don't know. We got a good one. Is first touch forward, first thought forward. But again, you don't have to play forward. But is your intention to go forward? Even if the player's at your back, even if you're the centre back and you've got to step through the play like a Mickey van der Ven, can your first thought be to go forward? If it is, great. We can see that by your intentions, your body shape, your first touch, whether you set backwards or you spun your man. And then once you've got, I agree with you, John, once you've got them behaviours in place and that mindset, that attack, brave, forward-thinking mindset, what they choose to do with that is up to them. So if I look forward, and I did see a pass on a big diag or a brilliant through ball, but I refused it, again, it goes to a point that Mick Beale said the other day, is like, it's okay to not make that choice, but if you're not seeing, or if your behaviours are not what we're trying to encourage from you, if you're safe every time backwards, well, actually, that's not a behaviour we're looking for. So it's really interesting to hear about behaviours. And I agree with you, because I think it's them behaviours or the habits that we instill in children constantly, that actually that's what you fall back on. You fall back on your... When the game gets tough in the 89th minute, or you're playing against the toughest opponent you've ever played, we don't rely on our best habits. We rely on our weakest habits. And it's probably the same as us as human beings as well. So I don't want to get too deep on it and go off tangent, but I think we rely on our weakest habits. So it's about getting them behaviours and instilling them. And again, John, maybe it's something we've got to keep pushing up, because it's all about behaviours, even at first team level.
Yeah, and the way we play, there's an element of risk attached to the way we play, because we try to build for the back, we try to play through the thirds, we try to take the ball under pressure. So, and we're trying to explain to the kids that if we lose the ball and we concede a goal from it, that's on us as a club, that's on us as coaches, that's not on the players, because there is that element of risk in the way we'll try to play. But we would rather the kids try to play forward, try to be brave. If they make a mistake, go and get on the ball and show us what you can do again, because we would rather they made the mistake by trying to do the right things than, as you say, playing it safe and being negative and inviting pressure. And we'll try and play through the pressure every time, rather than always try to play away from it. There is times you have to play away from it, but we always encourage the kids to try and play through the pressure as much as they can. And if they lose the ball, as I said, it's on us. We really don't care. We just want them to show the bravery and the resilience to get back on the ball and keep trying these things again. And eventually, one time they do it, it'll come off and it'll be perfect. And that's the bit that we then reward the kid, and the confidence comes for that, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're about.
And tell us about how Glenn and I have both experienced the North London derby in academy level, and obviously I've experienced on both sides. But I mean, I went up, lucky enough to went up to visit Mickey Beale, when I was up last season, and I mean, I was taken aback about the intensity of the rivalry in the whole city. Green and blue, if you like. Tell us about that. I mean, is your approach the same on that day? Is it you don't mind kids make a mistake? You're not setting up to win. I mean, what is? Tell us that unique nature of that real intense rivalry you have up there, and how it looks like academy level.
Yeah, so interestingly, we played Celtic last night, so we did, and the games are good, as you can imagine. In the kids' heads, it's like a cup final. In the parents' heads, it's a cup final. We are very much trying to play that down. I think naturally, when you come to Rangers or Celtic at any age group, there's an underlying pressure, whether it's from the kids themselves or it's from family members or whatever it may be, kids at school, just because everyone knows who they are. Everyone knows the best kids in school, and if they play at Rangers, naturally there's a spotlight on them. So everyone's always keen to see how they do. But our message last night was, it's not a cup final. Nobody's winning a league out this, but we do expect you to compete. We do expect you to go and show an edge to go and compete, and then your ability would take over. But such a big rivalry from the start, because we're recruiting the same players, we're competing for the same players, we're trying to develop the same players. But our message is very much, we try to go really calm. We try to go the opposite way and take the heat off the kids, because we don't know what the family are saying to them in the lead up to the game, over the weekend. This is the biggest game of your life. You've got to be ready for it. It's not. It's just another game, same as it is against Motherwell or Aberdeen. It's a group of 10-year-old kids with a different colour jersey on. We try to go the complete opposite and try and deflect that kind of pressure. And a lot of people will judge these games on winning and losing. We don't. We'll judge it on the behaviours we see. So we could win a game 1-0 and not play very well and not see any of the behaviours, just as much as we could lose a game 3-0 and see loads of behaviours and we're really happy with it. So our big message, certainly last night in any game, is we just try to play it down. We try to make it as calm as possible and, try to take the heat out of the kids, because if they're under enough pressure as within themselves, we don't want to add to that. We try to take the spice off it a little bit. But we do demand there's an edge. We do demand they compete. I think that's a minimum requirement that they have to show at any level, whether it's Celtic or Real Madrid or Motherwell or whoever. They have to go and show that edge regardless. So it shouldn't change the way they approach a game. But naturally, there'll always be an edge to it from the kids' point of view, because they want to win, they want to compete.
Yeah, I mean, we had a foundation phase of Lazio on here. Well, I had him on a couple of years ago, and he said they don't even play Roma anymore at the younger stage groups, because the parents are just the rivalry is so intense. The parents are the ones who think. So I mean, that's the question. I mean, do the parents watch that game, and is it? And is it? Yeah. I mean, is that quite a intense interesting atmosphere sometimes with that competitive culture, and you can imagine that. What's happening, guys? Saul here. Before we get into the show, just want to tell you about a special offer. If you're a coach and you're interested in ball mastery, 1v1 and small-sided games, the staples of the best academies in the world and what we talk about a lot on this podcast, you can now get a 20% discount on the My Personal Football Coach Level 1 and Level 2 Ball Mastery and 1v1. All right, so Level 1 is like a basic introduction into this methodology, and number 2 is much more in-depth look at 1v1, ball mastery, how to structure sessions and all those soft skills as well. Just use this code, MPFC Coach, and get 20% off now. We also include that 20% off on the virtual conference as well. Just follow the link in the description. But without further ado, let's get into the show.
Yeah, listen, I think I can only speak on our behalf, and I'm sure other clubs are probably the same. They do a lot of workshops with parents to try not to get them coach at the side and try and be understanding and how to conduct themselves. But that's not to say you don't get the one or two and they get a bit overexcited, and then especially if the games are tight, then the games can start to get a little bit edgy. Or if it's a young referee maybe doesn't get a grip of the game and there's a couple of naughty tackles, and that kind of spills off for the side and the parents can start to get a little bit excited. And I've got to say, I think back to 20 years ago when we either played against Celtic or Rangers or I was involved with those clubs, and changed. It's not as wild as it was. I think before it was a bit more aggressive at the side, and that kind of spilled onto the pitch, and I thought that it had a bit of an atmosphere in the game and it would add to a bit of tension, and I don't think it was good for the kids. Maybe good long term in terms of dealing with a crowd. I think at the time shouting on and things like that, it's a bit kind of hostile. But I've got to say, as the seasons have went on, I think the more clubs are doing to educate the parents, I think there's been a bit of a shift. Now that's not to say there's not one or two, but there's definitely been a shift in the way the games are played. But we would hate to lose playing against Celtic because we want our kids to play against the best players in order to get the best challenge. So if we had to remove a Celtic game from our fixture, the kids are the ones that are losing out from both sides because, they're some of the best games we play for a variety of different reasons: technical, mindset, physical, just that edge of the game, So these are all bits that the kids love, and the parents love it. We love it as well as coaches because, we want good competitive games where the kids are going hammer and tongs and that, and there's no trophy at the end. There's absolutely no trophy or medal, but it doesn't stop the way they go and play and the way they compete. So, and that's something it's a behaviour we talk about. That's a behaviour that we need to see all the way through if they're going to make it into first team football as well. So we'd hate to lose those games. We couldn't ignore them.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my early days at Chelsea and playing Arsenal. That was always the biggest game of the season because of the two biggest clubs in London in terms of academy-wise, the two strongest academies had the best players. Who's got the best players, all right? And that's the thing. Like you try to take the sting out of it, but you want to win. But you want to measure up, right? Who's got the best players on the show? And I suppose in that, in a city like Glasgow, you guys, got the pick of the best, haven't you?
Yeah. It's difficult. It's getting harder and harder to recruit because so many clubs now. They're doing a great job with the recruitment and they're making it harder for us. Listen, there's always going to be some players you just can't get, whether it's logistics or they're a fan of the certain club that they'll maybe with. But we're competing, every year. It's what we think our unique selling point is: one, the way we play, and two, the environment we create, and we back that. We'll never beg someone to come and play for us. We're not going to chase someone down the street. You either want to play for Rangers or you don't. Or same with Celtic, same with Motherwell, same with Hamilton. We trust our process, and if we put in the right environment with the right curriculum and we give a good games programme, it's like picking a school. You want your son or your daughter to go to the best school to get the best education. We think what we do gives them the best football education. People may disagree with that, and that's absolutely fine. But we think that's our unique selling point to try and get what we hope is the best kids that we can get in the country. And But it's good because we've always got to raise our game, because if we are losing players to the other side of the city or to other clubs, we need to know why, and it's good that we get feedback because we need to know what it is we need to get better at. We're a club that's always evolving, and our coaches are always evolving. So if there's something we need to be doing better, then we'll look into that and make sure we do that to make sure we keep that stream of players coming in.
And you mentioned recruitment. Let's talk a bit about that now. I mean, tell us about that. How that works. How far do you go, or are you allowed to go? In England, there's a strict rule foundation phase, 1 hour from the training ground, hour and a half on the YDP. How far do you go to do that? And also, do that one first, and I've got a couple of other questions.
Yeah, so we're a bit different up in Scotland. We can't register a child until he's 10. You can offer a commitment to the player, which is like verbal, or in some cases with clubs I know it could be written. But we tend to go verbal and we stick by it. But we we tend not to go and commit too early, because I think sometimes, you know yourselves, kids can develop at such a different rate, and the best ones at 8s aren't necessarily the best ones at 10s. So we kind of start. So to kind of start off the process, we have our what we call ready centres. So we have 5 ready centres, which is a development centre, kind of scattered around the country. So that starts like under 7s. We bring them in under 7s, under 8s, and then we would start our squads under 9s. The 9s and 10 squads can be quite revolving, because there's kind of quite a large kind of pool of kids, and obviously naturally we get to under 10s, the numbers start to streamline and they start to narrow down a little bit, and then obviously you've got your committed squad that would sign and go and play pro youth football under 11s. But the
So
centres,
how spread out are those centres? How far are they from the stadium, for example? What's the furthest one?
So obviously the furthest one is Aberdeen. Sorry, we did have Aberdeen, Dundee. We no longer have that just now. So the furthest one would be Edinburgh. We then have Stirling, Ayrshire.
So, and how far is Edinburgh? Excuse my complete ignorance of Scottish geography, but how far is Edinburgh from Glasgow?
So Edinburgh is around probably about 50 miles away.
Okay.
So we do have players come as far as Dundee. Dundee and kind of Fife, which is again, you're looking at 70, 80 miles away. So
a couple of hours.
Yeah, there's an hour and a half, hour 3/4 to come down on a good day. Traffic, it is longer, but so they all cover a kind of 50, 60 mile radius. We try to kind of, but again, some kids stay further out than that, but the centre is just maybe their local development centre they could come to, because it's the closest, part of the club for them. And then naturally we'll start to kind of filter those down, and we'll go with kind of a squad of about 14, 15 players by the time they get to under 11. So that's kind of how we do it. We'll have kind of games days and things like that for the kind of the centres to play against each other to identify players. We'll have kind of grassroots teams will come in and play. So we'll get regular games programmes within those centres, and within the kind of the 8s and 9s kind of programmes, 10s programmes, they play regular games, and we have kind of quite a big games programme against English opposition as well, which we do a lot of, and that's a good recruitment tool, and it's a good kind of what we call best v best challenge for our players to give them the best test.
So what sort of teams are you playing in? Teams in the northwest, northeast, I assume.
Yeah, so the furthest we kind of tend to go is probably kind of south, kind of Yorkshire. So we'll play. We've got a lot of good relationships with like City, United, Liverpool, Everton, Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough, Leeds, Sheffield clubs. I've been playing as a lot more recently as well. Wigan, Preston. So pretty much most of the clubs from the kind of northeast, northwest. We kind of tend to we go a lot of tournaments. We maybe go about 2-3 tournaments, maybe 4 sometimes each year. So that gives us more of an opportunity to play your Chelseas, your Arsenals, your Tottenhams. So that's probably the only time we get exposed. To be fair, we get a lot of invites to go down, but again, I think if we're going to go down and play, it needs to be like a kind of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where we can maximise the travel and the game time. I've been as far as Southampton as well a couple of times over the years. So the programme, our 9s and 10s, 8s, 9s and 10s programme, as well as the foundation phase games programme is really, really good actually, in terms of between the tournaments, the English opposition, and obviously kind of the teams up here. We get a really good challenge in terms of player development. And
I mean, someone once told me that, I mean, this might be a stereotype or, not, this is a bit of a cliche, but they said, it's, in terms of recruitment, if you're Celtic, you go and play for Celtic's academy. If you're Rangers, you go and play for Rangers academy. Is there a certain element of truth that was that complete just nonsense?
It's probably nonsense. I mean, listen, there is an element that's true. Like, some kids will go to Celtic and some kids will go to Rangers based on the team they support. That's normal. But we've got a lot of Celtic fans that play for us, and Celtic have a lot of Rangers fans that will play for them. And it's again, it just comes down to the environment we create. We're massive on that, and if we create the right environment, then the parents see past the. They just want what's best for their son, and where they think he's going to get the best football and education. And if it's us, then we're delighted with that. So, but we certainly won't hold that against any kid for the team that they follow. And it's just we've got a lot of really good kids and good players that play for us that follow the other side of the city or support other teams. So. It doesn't make any difference. They don't change the way they compete and play, especially if they're playing against Celtic, for example. If you to watch them last night, they all get wired in. There's no holding back, so it doesn't change their edge.
Glenn, you're coming?
Yeah, I just want to jump back. It was fascinating listening there. I just want to jump back to about the whole. I'm going to line up connect the dots with the behaviour and adults' behaviour. I'm going to go right back to the bit where you said about what is it like with the Glasgow derby. Well, We all know there's only one Glasgow derby, and it takes place at Celtic Park or Ibrox, and it's between professional footballers that are paid, highly paid professional footballers. All the other ones, they're not North London derbies, they're not Glasgow derbies. And I want to just extend that to grassroots football, because in my 10 years experience at grassroots football, before I even got anywhere near Tottenham Hotspur or being around academy football and the environments we work in, behaviours of adults are exactly the same as behaviours of children are as well, because when you get the A10 derby in the non-league between Enfield and whoever else, or Glasgow Tigers versus Glasgow Panthers under 12s, there are still Celtic fans and Glasgow Rangers fans on the sidelines. And unfortunately, as we all know, adults do spoil children's football. It's as simple as that. And my advice to everyone was, I know we're looking at this through a lens of the academy, but I really believe it's the same in grassroots. And one thing I've seen, for all the good developments in grassroots, and I really keep my eye on, the local, the teams that come in and what's going on with the local setups. And I think it's just as tribal in grassroots football. And I think this race to the top, and we've got to hoard all the best players, so come over here and play for Glasgow Panthers. No, we want to play for the Tigers. And honestly, some of the behaviours that go on do really spoil kids' football. And like you said there, we have to be the responsible ones as guardians of the game and guardians of children, first and foremost. I think it's really important that we stay on top of them behaviours and we have a reality check. Like, I'm the same as you, John, and Saul will be the same. When we play Arsenal, if at Tottenham, or when there's so many London clubs. West Ham got a fantastic academy. There's so many, and we're fortunate to have a highly competitive games schedule. But that's what we focus on. We focus on looking forward to play Arsenal, looking forward to play Chelsea and West Ham, like you would look forward to play Celtic, because we're going to get the best out of ourselves today. Us coaches are going to get the best out of ourselves. You guys are going to push each other. I don't mind a bit of atmosphere, because what we've got to be careful of is we can't wrap them in cotton wool to the point where we get rid of parents, because they're also, as part of their development, learning how to deal with hostilities, learning how to deal with poor refereeing, learning how to deal with the odd really poorly behaved parent that needs to be ejected from the training centre or the local park or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That the kid's probably more embarrassed than anyone, because we had a situation just the other day in an under-18s game where a parent was leaning over the barrier of a semi-pro ground, honestly, threatening the opposition coach and more or less offering him out, walking down the barrier. And it's like, come on, mate, more than anyone, your son there is probably recoiling to his neck like a turtle, going, oh my God, is that my dad behaving like that? So I just wanted to pounce on that, Saul, and John, because as we all know, that's not just about Celtic and Glasgow. It's just about adults. So can we just make sure we don't spoil the kids' game, because they're a hell of a game, them games, I'm sure, between Celtic and Rangers. I would have liked to have watched that with the young kids as well. So
I think what's interesting, Glenn, is you're saying that there. See, when we tie that in recruitment, because we still, our 8s, 9s and 10s, our kids still play grassroots football. So they train with us. They might train with other clubs, but they also play with a grassroots club. So you tend to find that there's a lot more, I don't know if it's like that down south, but there's a lot more grassroots clubs that are now starting to cherry pick the best players and almost making like a super boys club. So they're now, so they find out, as you say, Glasgow Tigers, there's 4 of them kids that are playing for Rangers. Let's get them into our club. And what happens is all these kids play in the best team. They're smashing games every single week. They're developing them because they're winning every week. They're getting a false kind of opinion of themselves in terms of they think they're great, the team thinks they're great, the kids think they're great, and then we've almost got to unravel all that when we go to play Man City the following weekend, when we've got a mix of different players from different areas coming in. So even at grassroots level, there's such competition now to try and recruit the best players to make these super boys clubs that it almost becomes a bit false. And if it was me and it was my son, I would rather my son was playing in the worst team against the best teams where he's getting challenged every week, rather than playing in the best team and winning every single week where he's not getting any real player challenge. So, at all levels of the game now, it's becoming kind of a bit crazy in terms of recruitment and things like that. But at the same time, we don't want to take away from the kids to go and play with their boys' clubs and experience these things that you're saying there in terms of that little bit of hostility. And because it is real life, that we, as you say, we can't wrap them in cotton wool. We've got to expose them in the right environment, to these kind of situations within. And hopefully, we control that pretty well to an extent that doesn't happen. But grassroots is a bit different. There's a bit less of a filter, and I get it's hard because a lot of the guys are maybe volunteers and they don't feel comfortable speaking to parents. But I think they need to take away this is just about the kids. It's only about the kids. It's not about the coaches. It's not about the parents. It's not about winning. It's not about losing. It's giving them the opportunity to go and play football. And unfortunately, that's the bit that gets clouded. Well, a lot of people, by all levels of the game, let's not kid ourselves on. That's not just grassroots. That's academy football as well. Some people forget about the kid and it turns into their development, it turns about everything else except the kids. So there is that fine line.
One thing I would say, sorry, Saul, sorry, mate. One thing I would say though is it's good for us people that are the coach and stuff to say, oh yeah, well the Celtic game is no better or bigger than the Hibernian game. But I'll be honest, I've seen it myself. Yeah. Well, then how comes more staff turn up for the Arsenal Tottenham game? How comes the pitch is full with more Tottenham and Arsenal coaches? How comes How comes you look around the Celtic Rangers fixture and there's more adults wearing Celtic Rangers kit than the day before when you played Hibernian? Because that's not a big one, is it? So we've got to be careful, again, as guardians of the game, that our behaviours show that it's another day at the office. So if you want to come and watch the under-15s or under-12s, come out every week in rain, sun or shine against Hibernian and Rangers. Do you know what I mean? So again, it's just, we've got to model them behaviours. If we're saying it's no different, let's show that it's genuinely no different as well. Sorry, Saul.
Yeah. No, it's top, mate. So I was going to ask just finally, to talk about the Scottish game, the state of the Scottish game at the moment. You know, you talked about you've been in the game 20 years. Why do you think? I mean, England went through this process. You know, when we were struggling maybe at international level. We changed the way the Premier Leagues were structured, the EPPP, and the way the national teams were structured. I think that, personally, for me, was like a game-changing moment. What do you think? Maybe that Scotland's not as competitive at the moment at the highest level as maybe they have been previously. Why not creating that many those players that you used to produce? And what's the thoughts within the game about that?
Yeah, I think so. We kind of, similar to the EPPP, we've started to change a lot in what we do in terms of our games programme, and each club's got a responsibility in what they can do. I think a big one is finances. If I'm being honest, I think anytime you go to the English academies to play, listen, nice big training grounds, loads of full-time staff, the attention to detail is really, really good. You know, I think naturally in Scotland, the clubs aren't as big. You know, they're not as high profile as a City and a United, and our league isn't as high profile as England, unfortunately. So naturally, there's not as much money. So again, resources are a bit more stretched. We're really fortunate that we've got quite a lot of full-time staff. So it allows us to, I think if we to look at our academy compared to English academies, we'd be Cat 1 in terms of the staffing. So we are fortunate, but I know a lot of clubs maybe don't have that provision. It is part-time coaches a lot of the time, so they're in at night, they've got day jobs. You've maybe got one guy looking after a whole phase, whereas we've got 2 or 3 that are based in the foundation phase alone. So we're really fortunate. So I think that contact time and the finances allow you to get extra staff in to go into detail in terms of the analysis and the tactical work. It gives you the opportunity to do so much more. So, but I think also we've got our performance schools, in Scotland, and a lot of the clubs now have got their own schools, so we have our own programme. I know Dundee United have their own programme, Celtic have their own school programme. So there's a lot more clubs that have got their own programmes where they can actually control what they do in terms of the contact time and the ball and that one-to-one attention that they're getting across the kind of multidisciplinary teams. So I think that is making a massive difference, and I think we'll now start to see the benefit of that over the kind of coming years. We're maybe just a little bit behind, maybe with the EPPP is. You think how long that started and the benefits that England are now getting with the players that they're now producing and playing at major finals. So I think we're starting to bridge the gap. It is just going to take a little bit longer, but I think it's also within the constraints of what a lot of clubs are working with up here, and it's probably due to financial reasons. I think in an ideal world, all the clubs would love to be full-time and have an age group coach at every age and, all that stuff that goes with it, but it's just not possible right now. And that's not to say it wouldn't happen. Every club's different, but they're all working within a budget that's got to meet the criteria of what their club brings in and what's best for them, and that's always going to be, I think, the biggest challenge. So I think is the financial side of things. It lets you do so much more.
What about the raw materials you have to work with? What's the state of the grassroots game in Scotland like? I mean, you mentioned street football earlier. We all know, same in England, people aren't playing street football. Is there is there a struggle getting participation numbers down, or is the engagement down? Is more kids inside playing computer games, that sort of thing? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, my thoughts may differ from others, but I certainly think there's a lot of kids playing football, and certainly the SFA, the Scottish FA, and clubs are, there's probably more kids playing grassroots than there's ever been. But again, there's more kids playing grassroots football than playing street football, and I still think that's a massive barrier because, whether it's just society now, you're not allowed to play football in certain estates, or whatever barriers there is. And there's computer games, but apparently some kids that sees it just go and play the Xbox for half an hour, that's to go and get a ball. We don't see enough kids just wanting to master basics. We don't see enough kids just going, so I'm going to take the football out of there, I'm just going to. We don't see it. So in try to get them to do that is really, really difficult. I think there's a lot of kids that will kick about the back door and mess about with the ball, but you never see kids just down the park anymore playing football, and I don't think we're ever going to, I think that's gone now. I think that part of the game is gone, and I think the grassroots do a great job in trying to give provision to kids. I still think there's a lot of coach education needs to be done at grassroots football as well, to give them the best kind of platform to develop the kids, because I still think when I go and walk the dog down the park, I still see kids getting screamed at, getting taken off for making a mistake, and it becomes more about the coach and about the kids, and I'm just wondering, is there a lot of kids that do stop playing football because they don't like it? Because the coaches are so aggressive and shouting at them and things like that, and I'm just going, is their participation levels getting affected because of the way we coach the kids at grassroots? I still think there's a lot of work to be done, in my opinion, to develop the grassroots side of the game as well, to make the coaches better educated, to give the kids a better grounding. But certainly, my opinion is that there's not enough street football. There's not enough kids playing in the streets, want to just play football themselves, play with their mates. You don't get it now, so and it's how we try and recreate that as much as we can in the training sessions and in the time we do have them. So, but everyone's got a responsibility, whether it's grassroots or academy football. We've all got a responsibility to try and promote that with the kids.
And what about yourself, John? What's your aspirations in the game? Where do you want to go? Do you see yourself as a specialist in the foundation phase? Would you like to work with older groups or first team?
Yeah, so I've had a kind of opportunity where I worked with older players for a year and a half when I worked at Hearts, and I enjoyed it. It was a real eye opener, but really 15's age group, so it became closer to contract time, and it was a bit edgy, and I didn't really like the atmosphere. And I've got to be honest, I didn't think I was good enough to coach at 15's and 16's at the time. I enjoy the foundation phase. I like the enthusiasm of the kids that come running in the building and they don't want to leave, and I think my personality is better suited to working with younger players. I think the kid in myself at times, I'm probably a bit immature at times, and I probably show that with the kids, and I think you need that passion and enthusiasm when you're working with younger ones. I think I get more from them, they get more from me. In terms of where I want to go, do you know what a lot of people see as a negative? That you don't want to work in what age groups. Personally, I don't see myself moving out the foundation phase, but that doesn't mean I want to stop developing. I want to be the best foundation phase coach that I can be out there. So I'm always looking at ways of developing. That doesn't mean I'm stagnating. I just want to be. I think there's too many coaches that are so keen to go from 10s, 11s, 12s, 13s, 14s, and we wonder how we're maybe not producing enough players. Then why don't we get? There's no shame in specialising or try to specialise in a certain area, and that's for me is what I'm trying to do. I want to specialise and be the best foundation phase coach I can be, but that doesn't mean I'm any less aspirational than Jose Mourinho or Pep Guardiola, who maybe want to go and manage a higher level or a bigger club. Or that doesn't change my energy or enthusiasm for the game. I just want to develop the best kids we can develop at those age groups, so when the next guys after me, I've got the best platform to go and build on. So that's where I'm at. I don't see myself progressing higher. That's not to say it wouldn't happen. Football's all about opportunity and circumstance, but I certainly really enjoy what I'm doing, and I've enjoyed it for the last 20 years, and I'll enjoy it for the next 20 years.
So I just wanted to connect the dots there about love and passion again. There's a lot of similar themes here. We had Eddie Johnson on a few podcasts ago, and some of the stuff he was talking about, John, I'm just connecting a lot of dots recently in my head because we've been having a lot of football conversations, and Eddie said the same about these teams that are hoarding players and thrashing teams 16-0. You've mentioned that. You've mentioned about your love and enthusiasm wanting to be a specialist. We was talking the other day about Saul's gone down the one with a personal individual coaching route more than not, but he can easily jump back into the team game and whatever. And I think it's an important message to coaches to say that about, we say to our players, figure out who you are, and we're figuring out who they are, but we've got to do that as coaches. It's really refreshing to hear it, mate, and I've got no doubt you're doing a top job and you'll only get better and better. But I just want to go back to the whole Scottish thing about great players. Dennis Law, Kenny Dalglish, Graham Souness, Alan Hansen, Ali McCoist was an unbelievable goal scorer when I was growing up in the 90s. Like, what a goal scorer. Gary McAllister, what a genius footballer, right? And bringing it to Andy Robertson today, Scottish players have always been there in terms of they're as good as anyone else. Andy Robertson, pound for pound, has been as good as any left back in the world the last 5 years. It's almost a fact. In fact, he's better than them. He's created more goals than anyone. Yeah. We spoke to Tom San as well. Tom Bayer, with his Football Starts at Home, right? And he's done what he's done in Japan for 30 years, and he's taken it to the Philippines, and he's. You only have to look at countries like Croatia and Belgium, what they've done for so-called relatively small countries, comparatively like Scotland in terms of population. And I spoke to someone the other day about what they're trying to do in the Caribbean, in St Kitts and Nevis and all these islands, and it sounds brilliant. one of the main things on their agenda, because they feel like they haven't got the structures in place, they haven't got the coaching, they haven't got the coach education in place. One idea, which I think could be revolutionary: power leagues. We want to make more courts. We're just going to go and see, by building more courts and giving these kids more spaces to play, I think it sounds genius. I think it's revolutionary. I think if we just give these kids more space to play, where there isn't these stupid signs. How many times growing up did we see the signs of no ball games? I see loads. I ignored every single one of them. My football hit the car. My football hit my neighbour's car. I got told off by my parents. We was forever scraping our legs on the floor, getting grease on our clothes, ruining our clothes, and then getting a clap on the head by our parents because you got grease on your trousers again. You know that one where you're trying to shimmy your leg under the car, getting the ball out, right? You know, everyone's been there, so aren't you? Your ball gets stuck under the car. It's a brand new Nike or Adidas ball, or back in the day, actually, it was Mitre Ultimate or something, right? But it gets a bit of grease on it. But, you know, we just wanted to play football. And people would look at me, honestly, and all of us when we grew up, we was all on our own. And people think, oh, he's a right lonely little kid. I'm not lonely. I got the ball. I got my best friend. The same as Dennis Bergkamp talks about, years and years of kicking the ball against the wall. I think that's where we need to get to with kids, where you love that ball so much, you put it next to your bed, you polish it, you clean the grease off of it, you protect it. When the leather rips off of it and you're kicking this soggy cotton ball, and the inner tube, I'm saying things here that kids will never recognise because they replace their ball instantly, but you know when the inner tube used to come out of the ball and then like we ain't got a ball to play with no more, or your mate's took his ball home, he's got a new ball. But anyway, listen, I'm rambling, but we need to get back to that point where we almost create a disease of this love for the ball first and foremost. Yeah. Fall in love with the ball, and like power leagues, what a great idea. Build more power leagues, but don't make it go corporate and commercialise and make it cost loads of money where kids can't afford to play there. Get the no ball games down, fund it with local government funding and Football Foundation money, and get the kids back in the courts. Just have people to supervise it, not coach, not dictate, not destroy their game. Supervise it and make sure they're behaving well. And I think that alone will help develop better players. And we will see more Kenny Dalglishes and some of the greatest footballers of all time Scotland have produced. Let's be honest. Alan Hansen's probably as good as you talk about modern day centre-backs, Alan Hansen's as good as any of them. And I didn't even grow up in the 70s and 80s, but I grew up with my dad telling me how good Alan Hansen was. As like just incredible footballer. So we can do it, but there's some ingredients that we need in place to do it. And I keep bringing it back to the love of the ball and the love of the game. I hope people can hear your passion, John. It's refreshing to hear, whether you're that side of the border in Scotland or down south in London where me and Saul are. Passion is passion and love is love. And sorry, I went on a right old rant there, but I was engaged and infused by what you were saying. I was like, yes, it's the same in Scotland. It's the same. Yeah. In Japan, there's ingredients here that we need in place. So
we've got some brilliant footballers up here. Like we take it. I said earlier, we take our kids to tournaments in Europe, and we play against Chelsea and Arsenal and Barcelona and Madrid. And some of our kids are as good a ball handler as some of these kids. Generally, they are. So there's good kids up here. We just need to give them that opportunity to go and play. And we're starting to see, you know, we've got Billy Gilmore's and we've got the young boy Lennon Miller coming through at Motherwell, and there's good kids up here. We get good kids in our squads and the countries up here. There's the clubs up here. There's good players. They just need that opportunity to go and play. And I've got no doubt we'll get back to the 15, 20, 30 years ago, and we'll get those players back again. But we've all got a responsibility to do that, whether it's grassroots, academy clubs, whatever, volunteers, paid coaches. We've all got that responsibility to go and develop them and create the best environment we can. And as you say, it's that love of the ball and that desire to go and get better and improve, and we're all held accountable for that.
John, top mate, appreciate your time. It's been fantastic. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for having me. Nice talking to you.
Cheers, John. Take care, mate.
Cheers, guys.